Welcome to the Find Your Freedom podcast by Detox House. This is where science meets spirituality. I'm your host, Aleks and the founder of Detox House. And on this podcast, we explore the intersection of neuroscience, somatics, and ancient wisdom to unlock our full human potential. Here, we bridge the gap between logic and intuition, the nervous system and the soul, to help us expand our capacity for life and experience more joy along the way. I am so happy you're here. Let's dig in. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Find Your Freedom podcast. I'm excited to have this particular conversation today because everyone's been sending me the short clip of the Mel Robbins and Stacey Sims interview around, well, the whole interview wasn't around women and cold plunging, but there was a chunk of that interview where Dr. Sims talks about women and cold plunging. And I think that we are quote unquote throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And there's a lot of assumptions being made from that interview and a lot of things being shared on social media that women shouldn't cold plunge. And I wanted to have an honest conversation around that because that is a very black and white blanket statement. And obviously, just know that for me, cold plunging has definitely changed things in my nervous system. Do I cold plunge every day? No. I think I want to be very transparent about that because maybe I haven't said that on the podcast. But, and a lot of people ask me this when I do events or teach breath work. They're like, you must cold plunge every day. And I'm like, no, why would I cold plunge every day? That's missing the point for me. And look, there are some people that cold plunge every day because that's what they do for their protocol. Every single human is different. So your protocol should be different based on the goals you're trying to achieve. For me, and we talk about this in this episode, for me, I honor what my body needs, how I'm feeling, where I am on my cycle. For women, that's a really key part of all of this. And then what your goals are. And we need to honor our uniqueness and honor the fact that women's bodies are just not the same as men's. First of all, the main difference is we run on a 28-day cycle and a 24-hour circadian rhythm, while men only run on a 24-hour circadian rhythm. So our hormones are different every single day. And that is something we really need to talk about and we really need to honor. And I do not want to steal the thunder of this episode because we dive deep into that. We talk about, how women should cold plunge, when should you not cold plunge, right? Considerations for people, women in particular, who cold plunging wouldn't suit. I won't get into it. You'll listen to it in the episode. But we talk all about ideal protocols for women and the benefits that women can gain from cold plunging if you do it right. You cannot miss the point. You cannot do it willy-nilly. You have to do it right and thoughtfully. Just as everything else in life, I think we need to be more thoughtful about the things we put in our bodies and we allow our bodies to endure as well. And so this episode will help women be more thoughtful about their cold plunge practice. I did want to plug one thing in here because we talked a lot about not cold plunging alone. And you may know that I have a Detox House app. The Detox House app has guided cold plunges on there. If you don't want to do a cold plunge but want cold therapy and want to do a cold shower, there's also guided cold showers on there. So if you don't have somebody to do it with, somebody to guide you, it's a good idea to work with a guide like the Detox House app and do some of the cold plunges on there. And there's cold plunges for anxiety, cold plunges for creativity. There's all sorts of different ways that you can use the colds, which, that's why I love the cold. It's not only there for recovery, but it's a medicine that we're not using to its full potential. We need to talk about that too. So without further ado, I'm so excited to have this conversation with Lindsay Ferguson, who is known as the cold plunge doula. She teaches guided cold plunges here in Nashville at Framework and specifically focuses on building a community of women who practice using cold therapy for various things. And she's done a great job creating this community of women and coaching this beautiful community of women as well. So here's the episode, and I will see you on the other side. So fun. I love doing this, by the way.
Yay, good. I listened to a couple of your episodes, especially your most recent one, too.
Thank you for having this conversation.
Yeah.
First, okay, I have so much I need to ask you. And this is okay for the podcast, too. Because I do think it's all relevant. But I know, you went on the Dr. Zach Bush retreat.
I just came back. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely want to hear about that. But before we talk about that, I think it would be helpful if you introduced yourself and gave everyone an idea of like what it is that you do and also how you got into it. Like, what was your aha moment? What was that like pivotal like turning point where you're like, this is what I'm doing?
Yeah. Well, like you said, I'll start by introduction. My name's Lindsay Ferguson, and I'm known to some of my friends and community as the cold plunge doula, which, it's an informal title. It's something that I think kind of started really just because I was going through something hard myself, and I was always scared of the cold. It would be like the last thing I would have ever tried in a season of stress. But I stepped into the cold with somebody, and I immediately got out.
Yeah.
I think my first thought was, there's no way that I can actually do that. Like, I didn't think that I was actually strong enough to step into cold water. So I immediately got out and was like, okay, it wasn't that bad. Yeah. So I stepped back in, and the person that was coaching me was able to coach me through my breath.
Yeah.
And I stayed in for 3 minutes. Yeah. And I grew up in the Midwest. So I was like always cold. I lived by Lake Erie. I like hated the cold. I was like, the winter's coming. I just like would get so depressed. And then I moved to Southern California. And even in the winters there, I was cold.
Yeah.
I'd like turn on my heat.
Yeah.
I always stayed away from the ocean. Even when I would get into the ocean, I think there was a fear of what's in the ocean because I didn't grow up by that. And then also just like the intensity of the ocean is so powerful, but also it was freezing a lot of times.
Uncertainty. I don't know why I'm getting like super, because I have been doing a lot of like dream analysis. Well, the ocean and dreams represents our emotions. And I'm wondering if there's this like analogy to why people are so afraid of stepping into cold water in particular, but just water, ocean, all of that. Like, what are you afraid to feel? What are you? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry to interrupt.
No, it's actually, it's so true. I think because when I would go into the ocean, I think there was all these fear factors, but let's just say like there was the cold water to your initial shock, and I would like tense up. Like my whole body would tense up. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, what if there's a shark? What if I step on a stingray?
There's so much.
And so I'll sort of then backtrack to this experience of stepping into the cold, breathing through it, coming out, and having a feeling that I actually can't say that I've ever felt before, which was like this feeling of power and strength that wasn't outside, it was inside. And of course, I think some of that's the dopamine rush.
Yes.
But it was kind of perfectly timed with a time in my life that was uncertain and required a lot of introspection and connection to my body and connection to myself that I hadn't really been listening to for, honestly, probably most of my life.
Yeah.
And my nature is, as one of my friends calls me, the ultimate hype woman. So then I'm like, okay, I had a toddler at the time. Now she's not so much a toddler anymore, but what if I can help women who are also moms and are juggling multiple things and have a very small amount of time in their day to connect with themselves immediately.
Yeah.
And it's like,
what 3 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah. What if you can just get in? So, but I assumed a lot of women were like me. They're like, I can't do that. Like, that's terrifying to me. And I'm not, how do I even like venture into stepping in cold water? And so I started hosting these once a week workouts at my house where we would do a workout, and then I would invite anyone who wanted to try to cold plunge. And we have a sauna, so you could also do the sauna.
Forth.
Yeah. And so it was met in more of a community, warm, welcoming environment to try something hard. And then that led into doing some workshops, more intimate embodiment workshops, just at my house with another friend of mine who is really talented, and it's called the well, she did the embodiment deck, but now it's why can't I think of it? But it's like for moms. Now she does a deck that's for moms. So we started doing those, and that was really, I think, more where I saw people really start to transform in the water because of more of the vulnerable environment that we were creating in the safe place. But more importantly, watching other women witness a woman do something really hard. And then it's just like this emotional, I don't know, it's just like when you're in community and you're especially around, I mean, I've only experienced it around women. I haven't done group work around men, so I don't know what that would be like, but this is just like something I can't describe. And so that's really where I got started. It was sort of like my own experience, like most people trying something.
We're all on a journey,
right?
Yeah. Can I ask, so you said you were going through a pretty difficult time, and this is where you needed the cold and it was your greatest teacher. Specifically, how were you using it to get through this difficult time? How often were you doing it? Were you doing it with a guide? How did it shift your state, and how did it make you, and you can share as much detail as possible, whatever you feel comfortable with in terms of like the actual tactical, like mindset, physical, spiritual, anything like that, where the cold plunge really helped you get through this time.
Yeah. I was really using it as a reminder. Kind of a ritual reminder. And I really just listened to my body of like what I needed. And I love doing it to music. So I generally, when I first started getting into it, I would do it mostly every day. I maybe 5 days a week, give or take. So maybe not every day, but most days during the week.
And would you do it in the morning, first thing?
Yeah, I'm not a morning, like, get out of bed. I did one time where I did, like, 12 days in a row, first thing in the morning. But most of the time, it would be, before I'd work out. So around 9:30, and then I would go to the gym. Now it kind of varies. But in that more acute season, I was doing it more consistently in the morning time.
Okay.
Yeah. I was doing it for 3 minutes. Like, I was like,
this is it.
This was my thing. 3 minutes.
At what temperature?
It just kind of varied, but I'd say in like the 40s.
Okay.
But that has shifted, and we can obviously talk a little bit about that. But when I also think it's interesting because I think there is a difference between doing it in like, I had a Frigidaire freezer that I just makeshifted and essentially made my own cold plunge.
Yeah.
So there wasn't water circulating.
Right. So that's different than the water circulating.
Yeah. Now I have one that circulates, and I leave it at 52. And sometimes I unplug it because I just don't need it to be that cold.
Yes.
But it feels colder.
When it's circulating. Yeah, I know.
You know?
When I guide people in the cold plunges, and when at home it's circulating, but then when I do the pop-ups, it's just the portable one. So I'll put my hand in there and circulate it, and they'll hate me during that time. I'm like, breathe through it. It's getting everywhere. Don't worry. Like, let's move through it. So yeah, it's definitely different when the water is stagnant and when it's moving. But yes, the temperature piece, super, super important within the context of our conversation today, which is specifically cold plunging for women. And I want to dive deep into a couple of things. The actual metrics, how cold should it be? Should you do it before or after workout? Should you be doing it every day, given that we have, not only a circadian rhythm, but we have a hormonal cycle that's different every single day? How do you work with the cycle? Women who have adrenal fatigue, thyroid issues, hair loss, all these things that are hormonally impacted, should they be cold plunging? All these things are coming up, especially as we listen to the Mel Robbins, Stacey Sims episode. Everybody's sending me these. They're like, this is so bad for women. And I think what my intention was with this episode today is to, quote unquote, no pun intended, not throw the baby out with the bathwater, not throw the baby out with the cold plunge water, or whatever. That the truth is women should plunge differently than men. That is for sure what we know, because we're not the same. And there are things to consider. But to your point, and seeing how beautiful this cold therapy has been in your journey, and you get to witness in group and community women overcoming themselves, witnessing their own power, releasing emotion, and this is a conduit for that. Like, we don't want to take that away from women. And so I hate that the messaging out there is like making everybody kind of just be like, oh, this is my excuse
to not try it.
To not try it. Meanwhile, it's like this is the medicine. Mm-hmm. How do we make it medicine so that it's not actually harming you? Because there is this like also expression, the medicine becomes the poison. Mm-hmm. We do not want it to become the poison. So how do we keep it medicinal? How do we make sure we're honoring our uniqueness as women and allowing other women to experience the beauty of a cold plunge? Because I agree with you. I mean, wow, like the healing that I received from the cold, the witnessing of my own power, the like, not even that, like just my body, the appreciation for my body and what it's capable of. So I'm just excited to shed a little bit more light on, how women should do this. And you are working with women in particular. So would love to hear how you work with your community specifically on guiding them on how to do this in a way that's beneficial for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the first thing is to try, if you're thinking about it, is to do it with someone. Mm-hmm. Yes, would it be ideal to do it with someone who's done it before? Probably. But for sure, never trying it alone.
Yeah.
And I also think it's like, to your point around women should just be cold plunging different than men. Mm-hmm. It's like you really should just start at the most warmest temperature, which, you could do 70 degrees if you wanted, but if you want full benefits, starting
below
at
60.
Like 59 degrees.
Yeah.
But I think, I always do so much better when I'm doing it with a friend. Mm-hmm. So I remember when I was doing it quite consistently, I had my friend that I would call and be like, I'm going to do the cold plunge. You want to come over? And so I was doing it a lot with community, whether it's just like one person. I didn't have to be in a big group. And I think it obviously made it easier because I had one at my house versus having to go somewhere. But you can also start with just a cold shower too. I personally think cold showers are harder.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I never, I do like the idea of like really submerging and surrendering into the water. Yeah. I think there's something really spiritual about it.
There is.
But I also look at it, and I think you and I probably share a similar view on using the cold of more of a spiritual practice than I don't know what you would call it, like the more bro culture or something.
The recovery, the fitness, it's mind, body, and spirit.
Sure.
Like that's how we think about it, right?
Yeah.
And there's definitely the body that comes into play. You're like, yeah, the body's going to receive benefits.
Great.
But your mind and your spirit also, and just wait to see how that shifts because to your point, there are some things that we still cannot explain that happen in the cold where you're like, I just had a transcendent experience. Like when I guide some people, they're like, I don't know where I was. Like, what was that? It was almost like, again, it's just witnessing their own power. And again, it's physical too, to your point. It's the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
It's the adrenaline rush. It's the blood flowing into your vital organs. And it's then working with the body. I think, you know what I think it is too? I think most people let their bodies run them. Right? They will have a pain or, you know, and I'm guilty of this myself. So when I say they, I mean me too. You know, we will, like my bodies, and look, we want to listen to our bodies. If it's tired, give it rest. Don't push, don't force. But there's something to be said about this like lack of like mind over matter where you really witness it. And I think the cold plunge is one of those moments where you're like, oh, wow, mind over matter is a real thing. Like this, I use the analogy of a horse. Like the body is the horse and I'm riding the horse and I let the horse take me wherever it wants to go 24/7. And this time the horse wanted to buck and it wanted to run and it was in fight or flight and I reeled it in. And witnessing yourself reel it in, you're like, wait, I can do that? Wait, I could do that? That's crazy. Mind over matter. Like I just witnessed that. And and you said it so beautifully. And I love that answer. You used it as a reminder.
Yeah.
It is the most beautiful reminder of the mind over matter piece.
For sure. Yeah. And I would say in my own experience, I just didn't have those tools. I wasn't taught that. I let that part of me be very dimmed. And I think the cold started to let me see how bright it was. And I don't think that I would have continued. It was interesting because I sort of like attribute having my daughter, there was like a spark there of like, oh, I don't have to be the same person I was before I had her. So there was like this little glimmer of something that was like nagging. And then I read a book, and it's a little cliche because a lot of people probably read it, but Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Oh, that book changed my life.
And I read that.
That's one of the reasons I moved to Nashville. That's a whole other story.
So that there was something, you know, it was just like, okay. And I didn't even realize that book impacted me. I was talking to my partner and I read an excerpt and I just started weeping. And he was like, what, like, are you okay? And I was like, honestly, I just like feel so much like this. And I didn't realize that. And then I think it just like opened me up to try something like a cold plunge, right? Like before I would have been too scared because if I failed, I would have looked weak and there's no way I can do that. And so I think there's like these little moments of just like peeling back the onion, just peeling layer by layer. And so I think the cold plunge for me started to crack it a little further open where I would be more open to feeling more connected to myself, you know? And I think that's where our conversation around, that's why I even started following Dr. Zach Bush. You know, it's like I would have never connected to that message prior to experiencing something like an opening that I had with deepening my breath practice in the water. And I remember the kind of full circle moment. I moved here from Southern California, but like I said, I'm originally from Ohio. But I moved from Southern California and I never really went into the ocean. I had to go back for work, maybe a year into doing cold pretty regularly. And I woke up and I ran to the beach and it was like 6 a.m. It was still foggy, chilly, cold. There's no way I would have ever done that before. And I just like jumped in.
Yeah.
And it was the most freeing and I wasn't scared about what was in the water. And I was like, I just felt more free in my life to essentially it's like a metaphor.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
is. Yeah.
And so that is really, I think, sort of this like, and I still do it. I've been doing it for 4 years. I've sort of shifted my practice as I've evolved and, read more things. Just like anything, it's a new practice, and there's new science coming out around it every day. So I think that's where, just like anything, people, I think, sort of, social media can sort of like take things and like run with it. And that's where it's just like, you just have to like take a deep breath and calm your, when you see a clip somewhere of like, it's cold plunging is bad for women. Let's like take a deep breath and like, I follow Dr. Soberg, Susanna Soberg? And she has a lot of research around it. And so, I just try to follow scientists who are actually doing research around it. And, but I have shifted because of some of that.
Yeah.
And just like the older that I get and the closer to perimenopause I am broaching.
Yeah.
And then I can help, or, I've had friends who have been pregnant or trying to get pregnant, and they're coming to me asking for advice. And so it's like, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist. And I just want to be really thoughtful around, it's like, I'm not an expert. I just have experienced it. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the who should be plunging and who should not. Obviously, pregnant women. So what are the and maybe they are. I don't know. What is your opinion, and what have you seen in the research of women who should not be plunging?
I think that if you have a heart condition, and if you have high blood pressure, I would say I would not advise to be cold plunging. I think it can be a little dangerous. I don't think there's enough research around it. Now, disclaimer, my stepmom has high blood pressure. She's in her mid-70s, and I helped her try it, and she felt so good. And she is monitoring her blood pressure, and she is not going in too cold, too long, and she's being really thoughtful about it. And she's really listening to her body.
What temperature is she doing it at, and then how long?
She would maybe do it a couple of times a week, and in the morning, definitely in the morning, and in the 50s, like 55, 56.
Perfect.
And my dad or someone was always with her.
Yes.
So
you don't want to do it alone.
No, absolutely not. So I think everyone, and again, I think this is like, it's like our bodies, I mean, even coming out of that retreat that I just was at, our bodies are so unique. And I think in the world we live in, most of us are severely disconnected from our bodies and listening to them, and because of just the world we live in. And so it's really hard to drop in to really listen to our body. So I think that's where you have to just be, depending on where you're at and how in tune you are with your body, just being really hypersensitive around getting in the cold, because it can be dangerous, right? I have had, there's 2 different types of Raynaud's. And so, it can be quite painful for someone who has more of a severe type of Raynaud's. And essentially, it's like their circulation is like, is affected in their hands and their feet. And so, and honestly, I can't remember which type it is, but for one type, it actually is shown to get better, and the other,
I think do you know which one? When it's tied to your thyroid, right? And and it's so, again, to your point, I want to be very careful in how I phrase this, and whoever's listening, please be thoughtful. And you have the owner's manual of your own body. Like, everybody is unique, but there's this consideration for, women who have any kind of thyroid issue that may then have a downstream effect on things like temperature regulation and all of that. And you want to be careful with the cold plunging, but it's also really helpful in a way where it stimulates stress in the right way, right? Because it is a stressor, and it's what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and it also calms your nervous system. And so nervous system regulation, releasing emotion. And this is where I get a little woo-woo. So bear with me. But if you have a thyroid issue, the spiritual, emotional layer on that is like, where are you not releasing what you really want to say? And where are you not voicing your needs? Where are you not being, where are you not telling your truth, the truth? It has to do with expression, self-expression. And if you're thinking, okay, well, if I'm not expressing myself and therefore it's affecting my thyroid, well, the cold plunge will actually help you feel safer, build safety in the body so that you can then express yourself and hopefully like
Release
whatever is causing the thyroid to be sluggish. Again, that's the emotional, spiritual component. There's obviously like the body, physical components of thyroid issue too. I think it all works together. I'm not, I think I like to marry all of these things. But yeah, sorry, interrupted on the Raynaud's, the, cold hands, cold feet. It does, I think, help temperature regulation in some cases.
It does. And also to help circulation because the contraction and expansion of your blood vessels, which is one of the great benefits of cold plunging. And so I always let people know that they don't have to have if their hands and their feet hurt, they can just keep their hands and their feet out. Yeah. Right. So whether it's like a little prayer or, just keeping them out like this.
The little foot covers.
Yeah. The little
feetsy covers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then in terms of women who are trying to get pregnant, it's also, there's just not enough research around fertility to know if it's positive or negative. But I will say the positive part, I've had friends who were trying to get pregnant. They didn't necessarily have fertility issues though. They were still cold plunging, not, being thoughtful about their time and the temperature, just like I would say it wasn't really any different than I would give advice for any other woman. Yeah. But it helps reduce stress and inflammation. And it also is like a good preparation for
birth.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? Because you're a mom. I'm not a mom yet, so I haven't experienced childbirth yet. And I have coached some women in a cold plunge where they're like, that was like very reminiscent of my birth experience. I'm like, okay, interesting. Yeah. So can we just like double click on that? Like, how is it similar to a birth experience?
Well, I think it's just this, because it's like short and intense in that moment. And there's this labored breathing that you really have to harness your breath, because a contraction like essentially takes your breath away because it's so can be so painful. So again, it can be this practice that even if you're not trying to get pregnant and say you have been doing a cold plunge ritual and you get pregnant, it's like, it's again, you've already you're prepping yourself, you're prepping your body to be like, I can put myself in a stressful situation and I can push past where I think I even was possible. And that childbirth and labor is a great example of that, right? And so I think, again, being thoughtful and just knowing your body, and if you are having fertility, if you have fertility issues, I think consulting your doctor. But I have seen women really found that just by having a cold plunge practice in their past has been helpful in giving birth.
It's all about the breath.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And you know what? If I had that, I think about that, if I had been more connected in my own body and my breath before I had my child, like my daughter, I probably wouldn't have been in labor for 36 hours.
Wow.
I probably would have pushed her out sooner than 4 hours.
Yeah.
Because I was pushing up here.
Yeah.
And granted, I had to, I had an epidural and there's all these other things, but I wasn't connected to where I should have been because I just wasn't, that's where it wasn't where I was at in my life. And so I think about that. Yeah. And I think in terms of being pregnant, I definitely think, I think that there just is not enough research around it. And I think in terms of like core body temperature, and your core body temperature doesn't drop enough that I think, I've actually seen women get in the cold plunge when they're pregnant.
Wow. Okay.
I have. But I also, that's for someone who's been doing it a long time.
Yeah, and they're not getting in at like 38.
No.
They're getting in the 50s.
Yeah, and for like a minute or 2 minutes. And again, like they feel really good when they're done, and they're not dropping their core body temperature to a place where it would be, harmful for the baby. But again, these are women who
have been doing it.
Very experienced. They know their body, but it's like on a blanket statement, I would say, no, absolutely. I would say don't cold plunge if you're pregnant, just like not getting in the sauna when you're pregnant, because there's just not enough research around it. But just
what about like post-pregnancy recovery?
Yeah, I think, in my experience, I think waiting 6 to 8 weeks post-pregnancy is a good kind of time frame, partly because I read the book The First 40 Days after I had my daughter, and it's all around kind of the Chinese sort of philosophy around postpartum of keeping your body warm and like engaging your qi and your blood flow, and a lot of that.
You lose a lot of blood.
You do.
Too.
Yeah. So it's sort of like a lot of warm broths. I like kind of like warm oatmeals and those kind of things, taking warm baths and sort of staying warm is, I think, a good rule of thumb for post-pregnancy. And then when your body feels ready, I think it's a great way to recover, and also, think about like, sleep deprivation and postpartum depression and all these things. Like, I think it can be really beneficial.
Yes. Well, I imagine, for a second, postpartum depression or any kind of depression, the research shows that cold plunging is so beneficial for anti-depression and anxiety because of that dopamine boost.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's also part of like the spiritual experience that we still can't quite explain, but it's like the mind over matter piece where it's a reminder. So when you're, in a dark place, we need a reminder that there's this power within us that we can access. Yeah. Which I think is super helpful.
I always say my practice currently is 52 to 55 degrees. And I go in and I go under, and then I sit there 2 minutes, sometimes 3, and then I go under and I come out. But when I first started like dunking my head under, I would wait because I was scared. I was like, oh, and then I would do it right at the end, and I'd be like, and I would always be like, I feel like I just came back to life.
Yes.
That's like, I'm like, welcome back.
Yeah, that's like, I love that you said that. That my tagline for Detox House is time to feel alive again. When you open the app, I'm like, because that's how I feel when I do breath work and when I go into a cold plunge. I'm like, there I am.
Yeah.
There she is. And it's like there she is again feeling. Can we talk about the menstrual cycle now that we've talked a little bit about pregnancy, but our hormones are different every single day. When in the cycle is it best for women to cold plunge, and when should we avoid it?
Well, I personally think when you're on your cycle, like your menstrual 1 to 5 days, it's likely a good time to like really listen to your body and maybe like takes a little bit of time off. It has been known to help with cramps. So, if you are someone who is very well versed in cold plunging and have been doing it a long time and sort of had experimented, okay, this feels good for me, but keeping those to really short sessions. So during your menstrual cycle, taking a pause. Prior to your cycle, so like your luteal phase, so kind of right before you're entering your cycle, again, not going so intense, but right when you're coming off, like after your menstrual cycle, day 16 to I don't remember what those days are. Those are when you're ready to go. Like you're the strongest, you feel the most resilient, and and that's when I would kind of go back to your regularly scheduled sort of, cold plunge practice. Again, you really, I think it's like the idea here is not to like be pushing yourself so hard. It's finding that like really perfect balance of like, I don't want to get in here, but I'll feel so much better when I do. And I continue to feel elevated throughout the day. But if you're feeling like a big crash or you're not feeling great when you're done, then that's like a signal to you to say like you maybe pushed it too hard, maybe it's too cold. But, like I said, I used to be in the 40s. Now I don't even do that. I was like, I don't need it. I think I don't know what I was doing. I would think I was following like a protocol,
Right, and those are based on male research, men's research. I mean, and the tough guy, let's prove. I mean, I can't tell you, and I love you guys out there. If this is, I'm talking about you, but like can't tell you how many times I've been like, I'm going to go for 10 and at like 40 degrees or like it's not cold enough for me. And the question is why?
Yeah.
Do you really think that's good for your body, or are you trying to prove something?
Sure.
Because there are different ways to do this. And I think your message is beautiful in that it's what I'm getting from it is listen to your body. And if you don't hear your body, let's tune out the noise so that you can actually hear what your body is saying, and also experiment.
Sure.
Get in. Yeah. If you feel a crash, if you're shivering too long, you've overdone it. Next time, do less. And by less, we mean increase the temperature and lower the time.
Yep.
So like 55 degrees at 2 minutes might be your sweet spot. And that is ideal.
Right.
But if you're doing that and you're shivering too much, or if you feel a crash, experiment. Figure out. Listen to your body.
And maybe it's just take a cold shower, or maybe it's do closer to 60 degrees, or I have a creek in my backyard. Like it's never
that cold.
But it's so much, I don't know. I think there's a whole other benefit of being in natural water. Yes. And even if it's 65 degrees and I'm in my creek, it feels so much different. Like I'm in nature. I'm like,
you're one with nature.
Yeah,
it's like, a reminder again.
And I'm like, this is just as beneficial, Yes. And I think that's the whole point is too. It's like you're still getting the full benefits as if you follow more of a, like as a woman, if you are in 56 to 59 degree water and you are cold plunging at least 11 minutes a week, you're still getting the full benefits. So I don't know. I'm sure there are some people that are more acclimated to the cold than others. So that's another, thing to consider.
Yeah, body temperature, how much muscle you have. Muscle insulates heat better.
Yeah.
So that's,
And that's why women tend to feel more stress on their body when they're in cold water, because we tend to have more fat. So then we vasodilate quicker. So then our skin is automatically feeling that cold, like just more intensely. And so it's like you don't need to push yourself so much, and you still are getting the full benefits, which I think is great. It's like, and I've listened to that podcast with Dr. Stacey Sims and Mel Robbins, and I mean, she says the same thing. I think what happens is people then take
clips.
And it's like she essentially said, she's more of a heat proponent for women. She's done a lot of research. Dr. Stacey Sims is like very well researched in women and the benefit of heat. And so she sort of veers to that, but she's not saying it's not beneficial, you know? So that, I think, that's what I at least interpreted.
Yeah. I want to highlight something that's really important to me and get your take on this, but I don't think we should let research override our own intuition and our own voice. Just because the research says this is better or this is optimal, what if it's not optimal for you? Your unique body wasn't in that research study. And I think that it is such a beautiful tool to say, actually, this shows what the likelihood of the outcome would be for me But at the end of the day, I like to go back to listen to your own body, because if it's good for one person, that might not mean it's good for you. So the best thing to do is try it, experiment with it, and do your own research in like figuring out what your body likes and doesn't like. I think that's the biggest missing piece, and what is, I think, so funny, because the cold plunge allows us to do that. So in my opinion, we don't tune out the noise enough. We outsource our intuition. We outsource our own voice. And the cold plunge actually allows us to be with ourselves. So funny enough, it's like, if you're doubting this, if you're like, no, this isn't for me, and Dr. Stacey Sims just gave me an excuse not to do it, just try it and see how it feels. And then like if you try it and you're like, that was the worst thing ever, and make sure and to your point, when you try it, and I want to ask you this question. So if someone is cold plunging for the first time, what are the requirements to ensure that they're having the best experience?
Well, I think for me, I think I always talk to them about what's actually happening. So talking about that you're intentionally stressing the body to put your body in a fight or flight state, a sympathetic state. And then you are using your breath to drop your body into a parasympathetic state. So over time, where this is an interesting thing to think about, because there are some people that say the cold plunge will spike your cortisol. And for women, that's not a good thing, right? So over time, though, if you're doing that in a thoughtful way and you're really listening to your body, over time, it actually can help you drop your cortisol. So I just talk about those kind of things before stepping in, just so that they're understanding, okay, my body is going to feel like I want to get out. And generally about a minute in, if we're using our breath, and I would always practice an inhale through our nose and then an exhale through our mouth. And so we practice those breaths before we step in. And then I'm there because a lot of times you forget. So that's why it's nice to have a partner that can help you practice that when you're like just breathing in through your mouth. And so talking about what's actually going to happen in their body, like on a basic level, so they don't feel scared and they know their body's safe, and then teaching them the simple breath, right? And I always say, like, it could look very calm, or it could look like
hyperventilation.
And both are fine. And it's so interesting because the amount of times when I've been coaching someone and they've sort of lost their breath, it's usually right at the beginning. And as soon as I put my hand on their hand or like somewhere on their body and like, you are okay, it's like immediate. It's wild.
Yeah.
They just need a reminder. They need to know someone's there, that they're safe. And then those are the experiences and the people that come back and say that experience was the most profound I've ever had.
Yes.
Because it's like you're meeting someone in a vulnerable place. They're feeling scared. You're helping them move through this breath. And then they like catch their breath and then they do the rest of the cold plunge on their own. But it's like this, it's like part, I don't know, it's like what we're talking about, the surface archetype. It's like part connection with someone, another human that's seeing you and is like keeping you safe and holding you. And then it's also you doing the rest on your own because you can do it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's somebody witnessing you.
Yeah. It's so powerful. So I think that's why if you are able to do it with someone who's done it before and who understands, the experience, so that you're not in there and feeling scared and then having a bad experience, just like anything that, because this is, getting in the cold water isn't, it's, it's safe, but it's also, it's
stressor.
It is. So you have to be thoughtful about it, right? So, and I think also we had kind of already talked about, just kind of starting at the 59 degrees and sort of working your way up from like acclimating and just being okay. You like don't have to be starting at the coldest temperature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are women doing wrong when they're plunging? Is it, I mean, it's probably more just what you said, doing it too intensely, staying in too long, the water's too cold, they're doing it alone.
Yeah.
Anything else that what are women doing wrong?
I mean, honestly, it's so interesting. I find most women, as long as they have someone, like most women that I have coached, the way that they approach the water is much more surrender feeling than I've seen men. Men sort of start kind of like, it's almost like gripping versus just like kind of letting the water sort of take over. So I've had a unique experience where I think women really tend to like embrace it. I do think sometimes, again, I think just sometimes we hold ourselves back. I'm like, no, you can do it. You can get essentially getting up to your neck.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of value of actually getting up to your neck or going under at least before or after one of the two or both, so that you're really activating your vagus nerve. And it's so hard to get from like here,
the belly,
up to your neck. So I think I would rather someone, man or woman, go in warmer in like 59 degrees and go up to their neck and really get like surrender to the water, let it wash over you, and versus trying at 40 degrees and going to your stomach. So, but I think that women are so much more powerful than they even know. And I think the water really is this great experience to show them that. Yeah. And I think that's ultimately why I love doing it so much and sharing it with other women, because it can be really healing in that way.
Definitely. This has been so helpful, just reframing the conversation around women in community. One more quick question before I dive into Dr. Zach's retreat. You host these events with women in community, and you say, one of the things we talked about at the onset of our conversation was that's how you got started, is helping, helping bring this community together and women witnessing other women. What are some of the highlights here? Because, we're talking about cold plunging, and one of the biggest takeaways that I'm getting from you is please don't do it alone, especially if you're doing it for the first time, just so that you have a witness. What's the difference between, okay, there's two people, and in your experience, you had a friend, and then how does it change when there's, this group, this community doing it together? Is it a different experience? What are the considerations there?
Yeah, I think, from a practical standpoint, you can't always be gathering large groups of women, right? So I think like finding someone who, that you can push each other a little bit to say, okay, or like, it's always like, who's getting in first, rock, paper, scissors, or my friend Kara is who I started cold plunging with the most, or I just would always be like, or my neighbor Blake, I'd be like, hey, do you want to come over? What are you doing? So I always sort of was reaching out and inviting in. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the things, like you sort of have to take initiative. Now, when I have done it alone, because I had done it a lot, and so I felt safe doing it alone, my practice of that is I just put in earbuds or play music, and that helps. It's not as easy just because you have to motivate yourself, and there's no one there to be like, go get in. And then it's just a different experience. I mean, the community experience, I think, feels more embodied, and it can feel, because most of these women haven't met each other or maybe just know each other on a surface level. Mm-hmm. And so when you are in a group and you're all witnessing one woman doing this hard, vulnerable thing and they're scared, you can just feel the energy of how supportive women are. Mm-hmm. And you're like, this energy is like palpable. So
Yeah.
then it's like, how can you take that into your everyday life of supporting women and, maybe being a little less judgmental or being more empathetic of like everyone's going through something. And this is just a metaphor for life.
It is such a metaphor for life.
And if we were all cheering each other on, how much easier life could be, right? When you're going through something hard. And so I think, those community experience are oftentimes a little less, but they can be more impactful, and it's just being intentional around it. You don't have to, I am a natural gatherer. I did that in my past career. I love bringing people together.
What was your past career?
I was a wedding planner.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So I did that for 13 years. So I was always bringing people together for someone's wedding. And this is just a very different type of gathering, but it's also supporting a woman. It was supporting a woman when they were going through something really big, stressful and big in their life. And there's a lot of complexities and all those things. And so I've just sort of shifted into more of a different arm. And so I don't know, you could do it on a small scale saying, hey, like every Saturday we're going to get together and cold plunge and have coffee, or, we're going to sauna and cold plunge on Saturday night instead of going out for wine, So I've sort of tried to just use it. I love it. It's like fun and social. And, I think that's why places like Framework are so needed, because people are looking for different outlets to socialize and connect on a deeper level. And I don't know about you, but like every time I'm in a sauna, I'm like, I don't know, because I'm like sweating everything out. I'm just like
vulnerable.
I'm just like usually like saying things I wouldn't normally say. You know? So it's just, but I also think that's a really good thing. And so I think you could do it on a small scale of inviting a friend over, or gathering women or men. Yeah. And so,
I want to summarize what we talked about just to make sure we didn't miss anything. So for women, some of the things we talked about is women should not be doing it as cold as men. And starting at 59 degrees is perfect, and working your way down to, for you do about 52. So just playing around in the 50s and seeing how you feel anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes. Considerations for, pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, post-pregnancy. Sounds like if you've been doing it for a while, pre-pregnancy is super fine. You've even seen some women who are pregnant doing it, but we don't, want to say please do that, because there's not any research done on pregnant women. So be mindful, be thoughtful. If this is your first cold plunge, do not do it while you're pregnant, and think about whether or not you want to do it when you're trying to conceive. And then post-pregnancy, you want to keep that womb as warm as possible, but 6 to 8 weeks out, it's actually really quite helpful, especially postpartum considerations, anxiety, depression, all of that. And as far as cycle syncing goes, we don't necessarily want to push our bodies hard and do cold plunges like right before our cycle and during our cycle, but like right after your bleed ends, you are good to go. That's when when you can do more of like the HIIT training, the cold plunges, all of that. And then one question, actually, now that I'm summarizing everything that I feel like we may have missed, is like pre or post workout. It sounds like your practice is doing it first thing in the morning, and that works really well for you. But how do you feel about pre or post workout?
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes I do post workout. I think sauna is really good for post workout. I also think it's good for pre workout because you're warming up your body. So I think sauna could really vary.
Yeah.
I listened to someone, and I honestly can't remember who it was, but maybe it was Dr. Stacey Sims. But essentially using the sauna post-workout for like extra cardiovascular, because it's great. It's like essentially
especially if you've only been lifting weights.
Exactly.
And it can get your heart rate up.
Yeah, it's great. And it's really great for recovery. Cold plunge, I am not looking to, I do a lot of strength training. So I think it's probably a good example of this. I'm not looking to like build extreme muscle mass, but I do like getting gains in the gym. So I tend to wait 4 hours after if I'm going to cold plunge. And sometimes, just because I'm a mom and my days can kind of vary, I will sauna at night and I will sauna for 15, 20. I'll get in the cold plunge sometimes for like a minute and a half. I'll go back in the sauna and I'll go back in the cold plunge maybe for 30 seconds, and then I'll end in the sauna, and then I'll go to bed. Yeah. Now, that's just because time constrictions. In an ideal world, I would say cold plunging in the morning before you're working out, because also it's going to every time I cold plunge before I work out, my workouts are so much better.
Yes.
I like push myself so much harder. Yes. I feel so much stronger. So if that's possible, it's like kind of one of my things that I've been thinking about. Like if I can just get up a little earlier, cold plunge, have a coffee, kind of that's how I start my day. I feel like in the summer I'll be able to force myself to do that. But yeah, so I'd say sauna and then sauning after. I mean, before or after, but just depending. I mean, it's great to sauna before bed.
Yes. So that's my practice. Yeah. I pretty much
do morning.
I mean, to your point, contrast therapy is always so helpful, going back and forth between the two. But I'll only do that on the weekends when I have the time. Yeah. For me on a daily basis, I mean, I don't sauna or cold plunge every day at all, but I'll do it 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. And when I do it, it's sauna at night before bed, and then cold plunge first thing in the morning. Yeah. And then, I cycle sync and everything, but I also listen to my body. And there are some days where I'm like more run down and I'm like, okay, today I'm going to take it easy and just not do that. So it's like a mixture of cycle syncing and then also like, what does this body need? Yes. So that's super important.
Yeah. Because I find when I'm doing the cold plunge consistently, when I'm lifting, I am way less sore. Yeah. So that's also really interesting. Like, and if I had seasons where I'm not getting in the cold as much and in the sauna, I definitely can feel
the difference.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, amazing. We're actually at time. Okay. So I'm going to have to ask you about the Zach Bush retreat offline. Okay. But where can people find you? How can they work with you? Give us a little plug for you and what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best 2 places to find me, I do guided sessions at Framework twice a week. So you can look on their schedule to find the sessions that I'm doing. I do some guided sessions there. I'm going to start doing some new sessions, maybe a little 10-minute Tabata workout, and then we cold plunge and sauna. Nice. Thinking about doing something just focused around women there as well. So maybe once a month doing just like a women's only contrast therapy session, with the group. And then on my Instagram, it's Lindsay Longacre. So it's LINDSAY and then LONGACRE. And you can DM me there. I don't have an official website. Just kind of keeping it simple. And if you want to book a private session, we definitely can do that either at Framework or I have a home cold plunge and sauna that is also available. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this.
Thank you for having me. I'm so humbled to be a part of it.
Yay. Thank you. Thanks for joining me for this episode. And as always, if you need more resources on nervous system regulation, bridging the gap between therapy, coaching, and your body, and actually embodying the insights you're taking away from the work that you're doing, Detox House is your place. Check us out at detox-house.com or download the Detox House app. I will see you on the next one. Thanks again for listening.